Good afternoon. Let me know if you can hear me. I'm clear if I'm mic'd up enough. Thank you so much. My name is Sofia Droguet, proud graduate of Rice University, class of '88. I've had the luxury of a daughter graduate, Skylar Droguet Gustafson, and I currently have a son here playing football. Inordinately humbled to be here today. Lots of very quick but necessary thank yous. First of all, we always want to acknowledge the former First Lady of Rice University, our palpable friend, Wai-Ping Soon. Absolutely. She has been a cohort in this incredible journey with Dr. Richard Tapia. Leticia Velasquez, of course, David Medina, who could not be here today because of the passing of his father, Jan West, Fernanda Pierre, my cohort and other efforts we've done for Dr. Tapia, of course, Dr. Hand. Big thank you to Dr. Nicolás Canelos and, of course, Arte Público Press. I would say Dr. Tapia, and let me commence by saying, he dedicates this truly page-turner must-read book, and I promise you, once you start, I'm almost through my second read. He dedicates it to his beloved muse, his wife, Jean Tapia. As he states, the journey would not have been possible without her undying love and endless support. He commences with an introduction entitled Made in America, with the following inquiry: who am I? So I would say, who is Dr. Tapia? Dr. Tapia is a world-renowned mathematician who made significant advances in the field of optimization theory. He's the recipient of the National Medal of Science, the nation's highest scientific honor, given to him by President Obama, both for his mathematical outreach and expertise and his impressive trajectory, but also his outreach efforts. This award spotlighted the distinguished contributions he made on the mathematical frontiers, but also to the attention and detail to another matter. And he is also the recipient of President Clinton's inaugural Presidential Medal of Service, and mentoring. So in 1996 and 2011, he's at the White House. Richard Tapia was born in Los Angeles, California, to Maria Magdalena, Magda, and Amado, who immigrated from Mexico in search of a better life and education. Times were truly hard, as you will read in the book. They had to support themselves, and they were not able to obtain the education they sought. However, their educational dreams, like for many parents, were fulfilled through their children. Out of 5, 4 have undergrad degrees, and 3 have graduate degrees, including 2 lawyers. Of the nearly 300 graduate students at UCLA, for instance, Dr. Tapia, in the UCLA Mathematics Department, he was the only Latino born and raised in the US. As we know, he's a mathematician in the Rice University's Computational Applied Mathematics and Operations Research Department and holds the rank of university professor, the highest academic title awarded only to 8 individuals in the university's history. Among them, the other honors, he has the Science Benevert Bush Award and the election to the National Academy of Engineering, the first Hispanic to do so. 2 professional and amazing conferences have been named as an honor: the Richard Tapia Celebration of Diversity in Computing Conference and the Blackwell Tapia Mathematics Conference. He served on the National Service Board, and there's no doubt, because of his leadership, there's an inordinate leadership at Rice University in the doctoral space in science, engineering, and mathematics. For 4 decades, he has been intimately involved in addressing the inquiries for women and underrepresented minorities at all levels, at the university, the state, and the nation, for 40+ years. He has supervised over 30 PhD students, many of whom were women of our underrepresented racial groups. He's the director of the Tapia Center, which is how I and Wai-Ping Soon and others got involved, for excellence and equity in education, which has delivered mentoring programs to college and graduate students, professional development to K-12 and college educators, and won significant recognition for these camps for middle and high school students, middle school. The center's goal is to empower everyone to be able to pursue education and careers in STEM, particularly those underrepresented groups. As he likes to say, you, all of us, belong in STEM. Now, I have just walked us through, which are in essence what would be termed his CV virtues, right? The resume virtues. There's significantly much more to Dr. Tapia, so just engage me a few more minutes. A little bit of what I gleaned for 10 plus years of working with him and the book. These are the eulogy virtues. This is what we keep with us and ideally utilize going forward. Locally, he's Houston Chronicle's one of Houston's most fascinating individuals, in addition to, of course, one of the most influential Hispanics. And as the forward author states, his dedication, tenacity, and triumphs are signature for this prophet. Yes, she utilized that word. Cognizant that he will shortly address and inspire us, having read the book now almost twice, don't miss the reference to Mrs. Brentwood, the 4th grade teacher, his work with his family at the nursery, and the travails of being there. In essence, working with an Asian family that had to take part in a very difficult part of the U.S., and then in essence reunite, and other efforts toward that end. His work at IBM, well, of course, his beloved Jean worked as an operator and teaching social dancing while raising the children, along with Dr. Tapia. That said, what's inordinately poignantly, and you cannot take away as you read this book, is query how many of us are brave enough to tackle in written word so that it remains in perpetuity with eloquence and pragmatism some of the most arduous, albeit really contentious concepts of the day. He covers them all. He addresses, articulates, and examines with pretty de minimis words, all with significant punch. He talks about racism, the 4 stages of racism. He talks about affirmative action, its fairness, the Texas top 10% rule, and its ramifications, really, from a mathematical perspective, not surprising. He talks about diversity, the appreciation of its definition and its application to graduate education. He talks about immigrants, I'm one such immigrant, and the precious few, including to chapter 11, which he says is one of the most important chapters in the book. Speaking English, this is fascinating, that which binds us also separates us. There's a lot of double-edged swords he discusses with just beautiful and palpable words. He talks about networking, mentoring, and sponsoring, reminding us of the need for boldness, self-development, and self-promotion, what he has done over the years for so many. The brilliantly and executed and orchestrated the Rice-Tapia model of supporting the precious few. As he had stated, and this goes to the eulogy virtues, and it reminds us all, it's our call to action. He says, I did not plan on doing this. This is pretty beautiful. It was something that had to be done, and I knew that I could help. Nowhere does the job description of a Rice mathematician include these activities. And for most of you, for us, your job description doesn't say, make this world a better place. Yet, I implore you, he says, to care about this and do your part to solve current societal and educational problems. As he notes in chapter 14, the Rice-Tapia model is not complicated, as many things are not. And it has been demonstrated over and over again. Among its ingredients and recipe for success, it requires a champion. Of course, the paradigm, he doesn't say, but we will, is Dr. Tapia. And the willing to take the lead. And it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. And it's worth it. It's really worth it. On May 21st, 2016, at the University of Rhode Island commencement address, entitled The Road Ahead, Dr. Tapia provided the graduates and others gathered, including fellow Hispanic, the Honorable Justice Sonia Sotomayor, the following notes. It was with refreshing candor and humility. And he talks about some guidelines. Let me say as follows. These are brilliant life vignettes that ping Dr. Hand and many of us that have seen and witnessed the Tapia camps have heard. Dr. Nicholas Medina from Exxon, there's so many amazing people, Geraldine Terania Weiss, and Caroline Baker, among others that are part of this Tapia Center group. We've heard these before, and the Richard Tapia summer campers have heard them. Let me give you 3, and then encourage you to read chapter 15, where the 3 become 7 brilliant ones. The 3, I love this. I'm not the best, but I'm good enough. If you sit on the porch with the big dogs and occasionally bark like a big dog, the world will view you as a big dog. Race and ethnicity should not dictate educational destiny. I mean, that is so darn brilliant. The first time I heard it, I took copious notes, and every time I'm amazed. Race and ethnicity should not dictate race and ethnicity should not dictate educational destiny. Of note, I suggest chapter 15, that he says it's advice for the precious few, graduate students, young faculty, 7 outcome determinative bullets, that's what I call them, for success and excellence. I'm in my 50s, and I read them and will continue to read them. They're good for all of us. Wrapping up, I promise. As always, brilliantly delivered, Dr. Tapia, our trailblazer, our visionary, we thank you for your relentless championship of inclusiveness and diversity and excellence, demonstrating always the highest level of professionalism and delivering exceptional results. It's actually walking the talk. Bravo to Dr. Tapia for not only embracing but also redefining diversity and tolerance and global excellence. I read loud and clear, it's global excellence that we need to do, not just excellence, Dr. Tapia. In our recognition, all of our recognition, to level life's playing field and to serve as creators not only of knowledge, but of opportunity and equality. Last fall, as we mourned the life of his beloved Jean, I, along with my co-chair, Fernanda Pierre, also an amazing Rice graduate, in mathematics, of course, we celebrated our Paradigm Rice trailblazer, Dr. Tapia, for his 50 years. Given the gravitas of Dr. Tapia, is it surprising that in 1972, he is the one that sponsored and helped the founding of the Rice Association of Mexican American Students, Ramas? That if you look at the cover of the book, that's the picture. Do you know today that there's 6 Latinx student organizations that are truly the genesis as a result? Whether it's engineering, whether it's mariachi, and a litany in between. It's unbelievable. Dr. Tapia, no doubt, you're a professional exemplifying global excellence who happens to be a minority. You're not a professional minority, as you've said to us. Cognizant, I'm going to try to get through this one without crying, and then I challenge you guys to read and you'll understand why I'm doing this. Cognizant that you received years ago the pin. Here's your long overdue assembly. You guys will understand. He got the pin, but high school he didn't get the assembly. So, thank you for reminding us today, and always, si se puede.
So the purpose of this, as you can see, is to sell books. So we have here, we're selling books. So you can come, and we even have a reception. See, in other words, we have the talk, I get to sign, and you get to buy the books. But the purpose is to buy books, okay? So here, thank you, Sophia, that was wonderful, okay? I too would cry if I had any, but I don't have any tears, okay? They've all gone away, okay? Thank you. Losing the Precious Few, How America Fails to Educate Its Minorities in Science and Engineering. That's the title of the book. And here's the standard things that say who I am and where we are and what we're doing. And the preliminaries, part 1 of the talk. That's the cover of the book, Losing the Precious Few. So this was a 1972 Ramas meeting. I started Ramas in 1972, Rice Association of Mexican American Students. Because in the 70s and before, Spanish heritage in the Southwest was Mexican heritage, okay? It was new. Eventually, we started bringing in those other exotic Hispanics. So Ramas and all the associations at that time were basically in the Southwest, had Mexican. But in 1978, the name changed to ACER, Hispanic Association for Cultural Enrichment at Rice. And that was right, because there's more than just the Mexicans, okay? Now here's a book qualifier. The further a society drifts from the truth, the more it will hate those that speak it. So if you hate me, I hope it's for that reason, okay? Not for another reason, okay? George Orwell. Here's a plan. In this talk, I will highlight notions from the book. Sophia did a brilliant job of highlighting a lot of notions in the book that I won't. But I will highlight notions from the book that work against the promotion of equitable representation of students and faculty in science and engineering in today's top universities. Look, I've been teaching in universities for 52 years, okay? So you have to say, you may not agree with me, but you have to give me the respect that I've been here a long time. And I actually got tenure and was promoted and stayed around, okay? Talk qualifier. While many examples will come from Rice, I do not mean to imply that Rice is worse than our sister universities. We are all equally bad concerning an equitable representation, okay? An American axiom. There is value in improving the representation of underrepresented minorities in science and engineering and STEM. Everybody believes that. It's a universal truth. Major confusion. What is the value? Who are the underrepresented minorities? Major confusion, okay? So let's talk a little bit about that, okay? In order to answer these questions, we must go directly to the problem that we're trying to solve. So we're going to go directly to the problem that we're going to try to solve. So definition should be in accordance with what we're trying to do. The problem. America cannot maintain its economic and scientific health when an identifiable large part of the population is left out of the mainstream activities of science and engineering, okay? Hence, the best way to view STEM underrepresentation is as a phenomenon that endangers the health of the nation far more than it endangers the health of the various disciplines. It's the country that suffers when we have underrepresentation. It's not mathematics or physics or computer science. It's the country that's important. Okay? STEM underrepresented. So if we started to identify these groups that in the United States that are underrepresented in STEM, we'd come up with domestic Hispanics at 18%. We'd come up with African Americans at 13%, Native Americans at 2%, and Pacific Islanders at 0.5%. So our definition is, by underrepresented minorities, we mean members of these 4 groups. That's what we have to worry about, okay? And we must pay particular attention to African Americans and domestic Hispanics, since they make up 31% of the nation's population and 93% of the underrepresented minority population. That's the groups. That's the groups that are in dominant population and we have to worry about, okay? African Americans, domestic Hispanics. Now notice, international blacks and Hispanics have absolutely nothing to do with the nation's underrepresentation problem. International blacks and Hispanics have absolutely nothing to do with the nation's underrepresentation problem. Okay? That's one of my messages. Do I upset people? Yes. Is it worth upsetting them? Yes. Okay. Frustration. We have been playing this representation game for better than 50 years, and we failed at it. Example of a failure. Let's take the categories. So this is the faculty at top 100 universities, and this is Donna Nelson data. But look, if we take and look at, let's look at computer science. We have less than 1% black. We have less than 2% Hispanic. We have 27% Asian. Okay, that doesn't mean there's anything wrong, and I'm saying that we should stop Asians. Not at all. But we have to find out why we have such low representation in the other two categories, and it's not good for the nation. But look at that. If we go into electrical engineering, it's even worse. Okay? So we haven't succeeded, and yet we make a lot of noise. So we don't have much return for all that noise. So this is part 2. Internal university related. Okay, so internal means university related factors that contribute to the failure of improved representation. Okay, so we're going to look at some factors that I believe contribute to the failure of improved representation. Internal failure factors. 1, including non-domestic blacks and Hispanics in the category underrepresented minorities serves to exacerbate the representation problem. Now, non-domestic blacks and Hispanics usually make outstanding faculty, some of our best, and they should be hired, but they should not be classified as underrepresented minorities. Outstanding faculty. Some of my best colleagues are Hispanic and black, non-domestic. Non-domestic blacks and Hispanics tend to be better prepared. They come from the best schools in their country, get degrees from our best universities, Princeton, Harvard, Yale, Stanford. Non-domestic blacks and Hispanics cannot serve as complete role models for us underrepresented minorities. They did not experience the extra baggage that results from growing up in the United States. We underrepresented minorities need mentors that are made of exactly the same fabric that has molded us. So my UCLA story. When I was a student at UCLA, we had non-domestic Hispanic faculty, and I would always run away from them because the first thing they would do is they would speak Spanish to me, okay? And my Spanish was up to par with theirs, okay? And so it would be an embarrassing moment for me. So I'd say, I'm not going to talk to that person. That person doesn't know who I am. On the other hand, there was one Mexican-American faculty member, David Sanchez, and he's probably the reason that I'm here today, okay? He understood me, and I turned to him, and he guided me, and I saw that I didn't have to be from another country to be a successful mathematician. I could be from Los Angeles. So, okay, 2. The underrepresented minority faculty applicant does not fit the slot of preferred discipline. Example, many years ago, the math department at Rice had an open slot, and I convinced the best, arguably the best black mathematician in the country to apply for it, okay? His wife had a lot of medical issues, and he wanted to be near a medical center. So he applied. But the department said, he doesn't fit the slot, so we're not going to hire him. Then I did the same thing, because I was so naive. I thought that once you gave them the product there, they would just jump at it. I brought the best Mexican-American mathematician in the country in for a slot. And what did they say to me, the math department? He's very good, but he doesn't fit our slot. We're not going to hire him. Now, recently this year, we had an outstanding underrepresented minority applicant for a faculty position in the Department of Seymour, okay? Outstanding. But the chair of the hiring committee decided who we interviewed, said, he doesn't fit the slot. Boom. Didn't even get a visit. He didn't even come in for a visit, okay? He should have been brought in for an interview and hired if he was really that outstanding. Then in consultation with the dean, correct the slot misalignment next year. To hire the best, you must take advantage of presented opportunities. How many people have we hired because they were Rice undergraduates at one time, or because they had some reason to come to Rice? We need to use that lever. And this individual had gotten his degree from Rice. Anyway, he didn't fit the slot. We didn't bring him in. We don't know how good he would have been. I know how good he would have been. Okay. Here's a nice story. Let's see if I can tell this nice story. The underrepresented minority faculty applicant does not fit the slot. Now, I was born and raised in California, in Los Angeles. Lots of stars, lots of moons. So as I grew up, I would dream. I'd say, I know that someday I'm going to end up as faculty at Stanford or Berkeley. That's what I do. I just knew it. And everybody says, how do you know it? I just know it. I just know it. So I went off and got a PhD at UCLA. Then I went to Wisconsin. Then I came to Rice. But in 1970, I came in 70. In 72, I received tenure at Rice. I was promoted. In 76, I became full professor, okay, 76. Now, in 1976, Stanford came calling, and Stanford said, your time is up. We're going to bring you to Stanford for 1 year as a visitor and check you out, see if you should be Stanford faculty, okay? But I knew that was coming, right? I told you as a kid, it's coming. I knew. So I just said, well, it's just in the cards. So Jean, my wife, and our two kids stayed here, and I went to Stanford for a year. I taught 3 classes, okay, in optimization. Now, I did certain things that weren't Stanford-like. I got perfect teaching evaluations in all 3 classes. That's not Stanford-like, okay? I became faculty advisor to every Hispanic group on campus. That means the medical students, the law students, everything, okay? And I mentored the students. I had a lot of time because my family was in Houston, okay? So at the end of the year, the department, now the dean invited me, Jerry Lieberman, a wonderful person. He said, we need you at Stanford. Not the department didn't invite me. The department accepted that he would give them a visiting position for me. So the department, operations research, voted, and they said, well, look, Tapia gives us a lot, but he's not the research superstar that we want. So we will make him an offer of associate professor without tenure. Okay? 1976, I was full professor at Rice. I had tenure for 4 years. You want to come to Stanford? Associate professor, no tenure. We'll see if you turn out to be a superstar researcher. Okay? So what did I say? What did I say to Stanford? Now this is 1976, and some of you will know that David Allan Coe, great Texas songwriter, right here in 76, 77, wrote a song. And it was popularized by Johnny Paycheck, great Texas singer, okay, from the 70s. And I dedicated that song to Stanford. Now, what's the first line of the song? The first line of the song is, take this job and shove it. I'm not working here anymore, okay? So that was my answer. So I came back to Rice and Texas, but in good Texas tradition, I had to convince myself that Rice was a much better school than that crummy old Stanford, okay? And that Houston and Texas had better the weather than that crummy old California, okay? So I did, and I came back. Okay. Now, reflection years later, I was the first Hispanic to be elected to National Academy of Engineering. I actually won, as Sophia said, the National Medal of Science. The only Hispanic, okay? Stanford would have enjoyed that. They made a mistake. They were wrong. Okay. Now, in 2007, I was invited as a chancellor's lecturer at Berkeley. And I gave 6 talks in 5 days in all different departments in different ways, okay? Now the title of my math talk, I gave 1 talk to the math department, okay, was Why You Would Never Hire Me Even Though I Would Give You More Than 95% of Your Current Faculty. That was the title of my talk, okay? Was it a success? Yeah, absolutely. Because I stood here watching the faculty fight. This half said, yes, we'd hire Tapia. And this half said, no, we'd never hire him, okay? So I just stood and watched while they fought it out, okay? It was a great talk. It was a great talk. Okay. So, okay. Our faculty hiring criteria are flawed. We emphasize research at the expense of everything else. That's what Stanford did, okay? Not all faculty need to be carbon copies of each other. A varied portfolio is healthy for the department, the country, and the university. Internal failure factor number 3, okay? Migration of underrepresented minority undergraduates, STEM students, away from STEM towards the friendlier side of campus, sociology, political science, English, away from STEM. Rice exposed. NACME, National Association of, NACME was National Action Council of Minorities in Engineering. In 1999, they did a study called Keeping What We Got, Retaining Minority Freshmen in Engineering, okay? Now here's the data. So they studied 117 schools that had dominant engineering programs. And the school, and then they determined minority retention rate to graduation and non-minority. And the school that was number 1, the index is minority divided by non-minority percentage. The school that was number 1 in the country was Northwestern. It had 79% minority retention, okay? 92% non-minority. Now Stanford I put in the hopper. They had 65% minority, 125% non-minority. That means a lot of students from STEM moved into engineering. They were 6 out of 117. Now Rice, 30% minority, 83% non-minority. We were 96th out of 117. Okay? That's not good. That's not good. Rice was worse than our sister universities in retaining underrepresented minority students in engineering. The harsh reality, this is a harsh reality, is that it is highly likely that many of these migrated students would be practicing engineers today if they had not chosen Rice. Hard statement. Hard statement. But we deserve it. Remark. Reich does have a high retention rate for underrepresented minorities. It's very high, but not in intended major. Not in intended major. That's a false success. Okay. A component in the migration phenomenon is that in elementary STEM courses, the professors do not make a distinction between poor preparation and poor talent. They assume poor talent motivating the underrepresented minority student to believe he or she does not belong in STEM. Goodbye, STEM. I'm going to sociology. Okay? Sociology is great. Okay? The Rice migration data is 24 years old. So I ask you somewhat rhetorically, has Rice changed since then? You don't know. I don't know. Somebody should know. Okay. Low expectations from faculty for underrepresented STEM students. So some years back, I did a survey with STEM faculty at Rice, and I asked them if they agreed with various statements. So I'm not, you can see what the statements are, okay? But underrepresented minorities are prepared for graduate work, okay? 27% said yes. Underrepresented minorities are hard workers. 20% of our faculty said yes. But listen to this, watch this. Underrepresented minorities possess talent in the field of study. 6% of Rice faculty said yes. 6%, okay? That's low expectations right off the bat. Summary of our internal failure factors: inclusion of non-domestic blacks and Hispanics in the underrepresented minority count. Underrepresented minority faculty applicant does not fit the slot. Migration of underrepresented minority undergraduate STEM students away from STEM. Faculty has low expectations for underrepresented minority students. Okay? Let's go on. Admission of underrepresented minority students in STEM without a proper support system is of negative value. It's of negative value. You take a student that could succeed and wash them out. The Supreme Court and Governor Abbott will soon dismantle all support programs directed exclusively for underrepresented minorities. You know that's going to happen. Just pick up the paper. So here's what I think we should do. My suggested fix: a bold change in departmental structure. Each STEM department should have a full-time outreach professor, non-tenure track, with a doctorate in the discipline. A doctorate in the discipline, okay? They would be responsible for the graduate students to make sure that they do well in their coursework, qualifying exams, progress in their thesis, presentation and writing skills, attend the right conferences, job search, preparation of application packet for job, and recruiting. And for the undergraduates, the same thing. They would guarantee that they were doing well in their courses. They would be aware of all the REU programs and direct the students there. They would be aware of all the minority-directed conferences, like Grace Hopper and Richard Tapia and SOCNAS, and the job market and graduate school, okay? Now, what would happen if I suggest this to our administrator? They're going to say, okay, Richard, that's pie in the sky. Where do we get the money to do that? And I said, as a start, we can prune current diversity programs and administration. That's just a start. But notice I used the word prune. The first time I wrote this talk, I said, get rid of, okay? And I said, no, that's too hard. So let's say we'll prune them. But how much good do they do? We failed and failed and failed. Other universities fail. They all fail. Are we improving the representation of students because we had a high-level administrator in charge of diversity? No. Are we improving faculty? No. The outreach professor would be proactive with underrepresented minority students, but the program would not be a sheltered program for underrepresented minorities. So it wouldn't violate Supreme Court decisions that are to be made, or Governor Greg Abbott. Part 3, external community and cultural. That's what external means. Internal, we had university. This is external. That impact education. And these are in the book. Public schools. Today we're having a resegregation of urban public high schools. In the 60s we started desegregation, but we're back. In Houston you could find high schools that are 100% underrepresented minority. And the quality changes is correlated very well to the percentage of minorities in school. So big city whites proportionately do not attend urban public schools. Therefore, they are not impacted by poor public education in cities. Look at the chart. In New York, has 45% white, but only 15% whites go to public school. Los Angeles, 10% go to public school, yet the white population in the city is 29%. Chicago, 10%, 32%. Houston is 9% in public schools and 25% in the city. So look, if you look at the data, there's a 1/3 rule. 1/3 of the white population in the city goes to public school. The other 2/3 get away from public education. Okay. Here's something. Impact of culture and poor high school preparation leading to deficient motivation and work habits for education. So I have this chart that gives you the undergraduate graduation rates for UC Berkeley. UC Berkeley, okay? Look at it. So Chinese American, the women graduate at 97%, the men at 96%. Mexican American, women at 86%, men at 80%. African American at 82%, and the men at 65%. This is very telling information. So it tells you that something is wrong. Something is wrong. They got into Berkeley, but they can't hang. Something's wrong, isn't it? Leadership. Okay, look, we underrepresented minorities must be part of the levels of STEM of responsibility and governance. We must be there making the decisions and guiding. The National Medal of Science, okay? I have the National Medal of Science, the highest honor given by the United States government to a scientist or engineer. But I'm going to tell you something that I know and most people don't know. When I was nominated, I looked at I said, I will never make it. I'm not going to make it. And then I looked at the membership of the committee, and I saw a very active Mexican American on the committee. It was Carlos Castillo Chavez. I said, well, maybe I won't make it, but there's going to be some good fights, okay? And there were. And Carlos won. And I'm on it. Okay? Had Carlos not been there, I wouldn't be on it. Okay? When I was chair of the SIAM Fellowship Selection Committee, I fought for women. And I fought for underrepresented minorities. A lot of women were nominated who weren't making it. As chair, I played a very strong role. When I was chair of the Math Science Department, to be discussed, and when I was director of the Rice AGAP program, to be discussed, okay? Today, underrepresented minority leadership has stagnated, but women leadership is coming on very strong. Is there competition? Absolutely. Can we both go forward together? Absolutely. Absolutely. But you can't forget the underrepresented minority leadership, okay? Now, I had something in here. Maybe it's forgotten. If you watch MSNBC, Alicia Menendez, okay, Latina, she always has Hispanic guests. And when she needs a substitute to take over, she has a Hispanic take it. So the other news anchors, they sometimes have some Hispanics, but not often. So having Alicia Menendez in there, in that leadership position, is giving us the representation that we deserve. Okay, a Rice success. Undergraduate African American population is 10%. 10%. This makes Rice number one among AAU Research One universities. Be proud. Rice is number one African American undergraduate population. 10%. You will say, no, Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech is 9. We're number one. So you should be happy, okay? We've seen a strong commitment and many champions on par with state. And so that representation, the state population, high school senior population is 11%. So that's right on. And the national, as you know, is 13. So that's right on. So we have to acknowledge that. And I think that in the years as president, that David Lebron did a great job on that. So that's a Rice success. So be proud. Be proud. Okay. When I chaired the Math Science Department in 1978 to 1983, I appointed myself chair of the graduate committee. And I made some great hires, okay, like David Scott. Where's David Scott? I hired David Scott, okay? And others, some really good people. But look at this. I appointed myself chair of the graduate committee, and we ended up 50% women and 30% minorities. Unheard of. Unheard of. From a pool they said didn't have enough. The AGAP program, from 1999 to 2012, the Rice AGAP program. I worked through the Tapia Center, but we produce 89 minority PhDs in this 13-year period. We just splashed the country. We had 31 African Americans, 31 Mexican Americans, 24 non-Mexican American Hispanics, and 3 Native Americans. We blew it away. And the whole country knows that this program was the best. NSF would brag about it. What's my point? Can it be done? We did it. Conclusion, okay? Representation successes are possible. They require commitment, understanding, and champions. They don't just happen. So let's see. Please read and buy the book. All this stuff is in there. Okay? And I'm not asking you to agree with me. I'm asking you to take this background material and at least understand and be prepared as you go forward in your academic lives. Okay? Understand. Understand. Okay, so that's it. I thank you all for standing, okay? Paul, did you lead that? Okay. See, in my classes, I often talk about applause. Like, I have a lot of Chinese students in one of my classes, and so one of our students proved a theorem, and he went to the board and gave it. And then he sat down, they did nothing. I said, that's an applause, come on, you gotta play. So I told him, look, when I say something that's cute, you smile. When I say something funny, you laugh. When someone goes to the board and proves a theorem, you clap. But standing ovation is unheard of in math talks, okay? Okay. And math talks are terrible, okay? That's why they don't get, math talks are terrible and they don't get standing ovations. So now where do I get standing ovations? Commencement addresses and any talk targeted at large underrepresented minority audiences, like Blackwell Tapia Conference or the Tapia Conference. Anyway, those 3 students who were in my class, who I have intimidated, okay, I thank you for that. Now you're supposed to ask questions. So, Leticia, do we have a mic for them to ask questions? Do we? See, I had to deal with how strong was I going to say things. And the same with the book. In fact, our dear friend, the editor, Nicolas Canelos, and I went round and round. He said, Richard, we're taking that out. And I said, no, yeah, and we're taking that out. And he said, that won't go over well. And we met halfway in between. We took out a lot, and yet we left in enough. Said I was happy, and I thank you.
One of the problems underrepresented minorities face is that they go.
Okay, get it closer, because I can't hear you.
The schools they go to can't compete with, say, Bel Air. You don't have enough kids for second year of physics, AP, etc.
Yeah.
And I've been on a Phi Beta Kappa committee for scholarships, and just reading the essays.
Okay, louder. Put
You
it
can
closer.
tell the extreme difference in, or the obstacles in these kids from the lower income areas in trying to get ahead. So what we need for them to go on well in college is to get a better preparation in high school. There's some programs working on that, such as Emerge. But how do you have any ideas for attacking the root problem?
Yeah, I mean, sure. Okay, and in the book I took a little bit about that. But of course you're right. Cynthia Lanis, who used to work for me, she taught at Milby High School. And she would tell the parents, she said, look, if we had a substitute for the whole year or the semester at Bel Air, the parents would be down our throats. They wouldn't let us do that. But she would tell the parents at Milby, you let us be bad. You don't even come in and give us a bad time when we're doing stupid things, okay? So the parents have to be more aware and ask for better response and better accountability, okay? And that's what Cynthia used to say, that the parents, and especially the Mexican-American parents we're very, we respect authority too much, okay? And we say, oh yes, you must be right. But that's not true, okay? So yes, that is a major factor. If you can clean that up and we don't have such difference in the schools, yeah, it's gonna be good. But see, in the 60s, you couldn't say the culture plays a role. In the 60s, if I gave a talk, and I'd get nailed if I said culture plays a role. You have to assume in the 60s that the students were victims of a racist society. Parents were great, okay? But now we can say the parents play a role. Look at that data that I gave you from undergraduates at Berkeley. That should make you cry. It'd make me cry if I had tears. But I don't. But that's it. Look at that. Are you gonna call it racism at Berkeley? No. Of course you're right. Anybody else? Yeah.
One of the things that I have encountered in our department is that we don't have control over admissions for undergraduate students.
We don't have control on admissions, you say?
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
the department. It's just, let's say, in that example with RISE.
You mean undergraduate?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just through RISE itself.
Yeah.
So we don't have any input there. So what we can, and I think how we can change that, because otherwise we are like missing a few,
Yeah.
right? And it's just,
That has to come from the top. That has to come from the president understanding. In O Week, we have a talk to all the Hispanics, parents and the students, and the black students and the parents. So I was at one of the O Weeks not long ago, maybe last year or the year before, and one of the mothers stood up and said, "My son is scared of STEM because he went into this summer program, which is called RASP, okay? Rice Emerging Scholars Program. And he said he was blown away. He said all the other people knew things and he didn't. He was Mexican-American from South Texas. And the mother said, he's scared. He's scared of STEM and he's scared of rice. And the admissions counselors who were there, they all said, oh, he needs to have more friends. He needs to go to socially active things. They said nothing about the fact is that he had a reason to be scared. His preparation was not on par with the rest. And they said, oh, it's just a passing fantasy or a passing phase, okay? Well, of course it's not. It's not. So if the president doesn't buy in and change it, we're not going to change it. The admissions is going to do. See, it used to be faculty admissions. I was 8 years on the admissions committee, and there was a different model. But now everybody uses staff to do admissions, okay? And we need understanding. We need understanding on that.
because you mentioned rice.
Yeah.
I think it's a wonderful program, but I'm just reading into the page, and they say a rigorous 6-week program. And that's why they're scared, because it's a rigorous 6-week program.
Yeah.
And instead of like doing them like you're scared, and it's something that we have to change.
Yeah. Our RASP is essentially a bridge program, okay? Whereas the true Emerging Scholars Program by Yuri Treisman was not a bridge program. It came in and helped them in the classes, and it was incredibly successful. So Emerging Scholars is successful across the country, okay? So anyway, yeah, you understand. Faculty understand how much do we communicate what we understand to the administration? I mean, that's what I'm doing. Will the administration read my book, okay? I sent an autographed copy to president, to the provost, and the dean. Will they read it? What do you? I ask you rhetorically, what do you think? I say no. What will they do with it? Will they throw it away? No. They'll put it on the shelf. Okay. Anybody else want to ask or say? Paul?
Yes.
Paul, be loud.
Okay. So one of the concerns that I have is for when it comes to faculty hiring, there are these committees that are made up that are appointed by people, and if you have this long history of people appointed or being hired on the basis of solely their number of publications or solely their research work, you can end up with a committee that's in charge of hiring faculty that maybe all don't understand the issues that URMs face, or they're all maybe foreign faculty that are looking at their own, their own country's candidates, and it seems like that's something that's even here happening at Rice. How do you even go about getting your foot in the door to say, hey, here's a candidate, not only do you need to consider him, but let's actually hire him, and fighting this uphill battle with the committee or with the department, and even deans and administration that don't listen or aren't considering it.
They're not going to change their mind on their own, okay? You have to buy in. If you grew up on the streets, okay, in the cities, which I did, you understand a lot of the things, okay? So the faculty that come from other countries are going to understand research. That's universal across country to country. But they don't understand why are we trying to improve the representation of these things called underrepresented minorities. It's the health of the nation, okay? They don't buy into that, okay? And so they buy into research. So how do we change that? You ask me, and these students were in my classes. In fact, Paul was the unique intersection of both my classes last semester, okay? He was in there. So you can ask that question. How do we get them to buy in? We won't buy in unless it comes down from the top. That's not going to come up as grassroots. That's not going to come up as grassroots. It's got to come down from the top. Like when I was talking to Kay Bailey Hutchinson at one time, and she said, I'm so intimidated with all you. You're so smart. This is when she started TAMIS. And I said, Kay, we're sheep. We're smart sheep. We need leaders and we will follow. So lead us and we will follow you, Kay Bailey. And she did. So we will follow. We're really good at following, okay? Even though we think we're independent. So if the dean comes back and says, this is what has to be done, or the provost, or the president, we are followers. And then we say, we're just doing what the dean wanted, okay? So I don't think that the administration is together on these issues. Some are. But anyway, so one of my points that bring me great satisfaction is these students that are sitting there, okay, in my class. See, I teach a class on this book, and the students were wonderful, okay? And we talked about these issues. So I expect to influence them as they go into their academic careers, okay? They will understand it. That's what I feel. That's all I can do, okay? And influence you to think, and you have. This year's class wrote some great stuff. So I want you to think. I want all of you to think. I want you to buy the book. I want you to read the book. And I want you to be happy ever after. And
what do we do to get the governor how do we get the governor, our precious governor, to understand that he's going off orthogonally and destroying our state?
he's like,
Will he read the book?
because they're, look,
Can you get him to read the
of course not. But Ann, what you have to understand is that there are a lot of people in this state that support our governor. He was reelected. So if you come into a meeting at Rice and you say, oh, you know, what's wrong with the governor or something? But what you don't understand is this group right here, by and large, is orthogonal to the world, okay? The world is over here voting for Abbott, and we're over here like this, okay? And we're small. And in fact, in the state of Texas, you can ask, what's the faculty like? What's the A&M faculty like? Rice faculty is pretty liberal. A&M? There's a lot of support for the governor. There's a lot of support. Our neighbor at our house has a sign, impeach Biden, okay? A big sign on his house. And my sister, who is, has some health problems and can barely walk, she says she just wants enough energy to tear it down, okay? But she's not going to. So we're not. We just have to stay strong, okay? But we're not. Yeah, loud.
Hi, Dr. Tapia. Thank you for this talk and sharing your experiences and thoughts on this. I find it to be an extremely important topic because it affects like the future of not only the country, but like my experiences and other students as well. For me, I was curious, I noticed that you as a faculty had a lot of successes.
Yeah.
And there are faculty, and what is something in common in how you arrived to your successes so that we can look into and recreate those?
Okay, I learned when I grew up and I got a PhD, I learned what it took to succeed, not as outreach. I said to myself, I have to be an established researcher and respected before I start doing the good things. So I came to Rice and I said, I've got to get tenure number one. That's the first thing, okay? I came in 1970. I got tenure in 72. That's 2 years, okay? That couldn't happen anymore, but I did. Then I said, now I can start to do the good things. So I ask all of you to establish yourself in your career before you start to fix the world, okay? And that's what I did. And you had to in those days because you would be nailed. There used to be a thing where it's in the book, it was hire to fire. You'd hire minorities and then you would fire them because they would count who you hired but not who you fired. So you have to say, I understand, but I'm going to be a quality research faculty member if that's what I want to do. So that's what I did. And I wrote papers. Were they the greatest papers? No, but they were good enough. And then I got teaching awards. I won the university-wide teaching award twice. And I did other things. So I looked pretty good. And then I said, okay, now I'm going to speak up. And I would feel bad if I didn't speak. I know that a lot of people won't like what I say, but I believe in it. And I'm really well respected across the country. I mean, both David Lebron and our new president, Reggie, have told me when they go visit universities, like Reggie just said this a couple of weeks ago, he said he was at Michigan. And the first thing the University of Michigan president said to him, do you know Richard Tapia? And he said, of course. So I have president's lecture at Caltech and MIT. And they invited me. And, you know, I did my usual thing, whatever, which is here. So you have to be the researcher that I want you to be with the understanding that I want you to have. That's what I want. And you do. You all do.
Dr. Tapia, your talk has filled me with, like, I don't know, man, it's just giving me energy and power. As a first gen chick, I know I see what you've done and I'm getting emotional just from your talk, man. Good. That question was my question. I'm a postdoc right now, and I was very like, what the hell do I do to get to where you are to do what you do? So you answered that. So just, man,
See,
thank you.
look, research governs the system. I realized that. I grew up at UCLA. So I was told, you know, research is going to govern your career, okay? So I didn't say, well, that's wrong, so I'm not going to do that. I said, that's wrong, but I am going to do it. And I did it. And I won all these awards. And I brag about them.
Just make that your top game. We might.
Thank you, Richard. I'm sorry I have to leave, but I can't stay for the reception, but everybody should buy 2.
Yeah, we have, look, we have a reception. Yeah.
Very good, Richard.
Okay,
Thank you so
thank
much.
you.
I'll see you soon, okay?
Okay.